lot of the songs that we associate with white players actually come from black players. And the musicians themselves would openly tell you that, but it was often just hidden.
Story of rock and roll.
Totally. It's the story of rock and roll over again, about 100 years before.
Art is a banjo player. Art is a music historian. Art is with me in studio. His music draws deeply from African string band traditions that made their way across the Americas. And I recently discovered Art's music on Big Turnip's record label, which highlights regional folk music. Art is here today with the banjo. Hello, welcome to the East Coast Music Hour.
Thank you for having me.
Million questions for you. Let's start at the beginning. The history of the banjo.
Yeah, so the banjo comes actually out of the African diaspora. It's an instrument that was created slowly over time in the Caribbean.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks don't know that. I think traditionally there's this impression that the banjo is a uniquely American instrument. It's been kind of, in the 20th century, was kind of used into, like, as part of the nation-building image of America, but it actually, the oldest banjos that exist are from Haiti and Jamaica. And that's because, it was built by folks in those communities for their own purposes, for their own musical and cultural purposes,
When you say the oldest ones that exist, how far back are we going?
Like 19th century and 18th century would be the instruments that still exist. Though we know that because we have like drawn depictions of them that it goes back a little further probably to like the 17th century.
Where did the interest in the banjo come from?
This love of folk music. I always have like listened to bands with the banjo in it, mostly three-finger bluegrass style picking, which I think is what most people are familiar with. But then at around like 2009, 2010, a friend of mine who was train hopping showed me this video of this band called the Carolina Chocolate Drops. And they're fronted by two musicians who I think have become kind of famous, like Dom Flemons and Rhiannon Giddens.
Mm-hmm.
And,
great banjo player.
Great banjo player. Rhiannon's a great banjo player, does a lot of work on early banjo to like bring that history to the fore, which I'm very grateful for. I heard their tunes and I was like, wait, what? Black people play this music? They play this music that I was associated with the Appalachian Mountains. And then I come to learn that actually the music that I associate with quote-unquote hillbilly culture or whatever, the stereotype of Appalachian society actually has roots also in this African-American tradition. And that a lot of the songs that we associate with white players actually come from black players. And the musicians themselves would openly tell you that. But it was often just hidden,
Story of rock and roll.
Totally. It's the story of rock and roll over again, about 100 years before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that like politically it speaks to a pattern of erasure by the industry, not necessarily even by the communities and musicians.
And eventually it leads you to the Helen Creighton recordings.
Sure, yeah. It took me a few years to actually pick up the instrument. And because of that connection to Appalachian music that I was getting interested in, the Chocolate Drops themselves are from North Carolina. So the first banjo I picked up was a Appalachian mountain banjo, no frets on it. It's a couple planks of wood smashed together. And it put me, I guess, on a different track than a lot of players who get into bluegrass music or get into even like more modern versions of open back banjo and clawhammer banjo playing get onto. And that was basically my obsession with source recordings, which I developed from that, those early years of playing those instruments. And eventually when I got back to Nova Scotia, I'd been traveling for a bit, I stumbled upon Helen Creighton's work, and particularly the record Sankofa Songs, which is like a recording of the only, I think, CD of source recordings of African Nova Scotian folk songs that exists. I don't think there's another one. Yeah.
And describe the music that's on Sankofa Songs.
Yeah, Sankofa Songs.
What did you hear?
Yeah, it's I believe it's a set of recordings from the college school for children that she had done, and they're mostly gospel tunes. And a surprising number of them are also played in the bluegrass tradition. It's a collection of African Nova Scotian folk songs. It's the only collection, I think, that exists in album form. It was recorded by Helen Creighton, I think, at the School for Colored Children in the 30s or the 40s. And it's the only recordings that I think she chose to do on that subject matter. So in terms of what I was hearing a lot of tunes that I actually recognized from listening to African American music.
Right. Are the records there? Do we know who the voices are that we're hearing on the recordings?
Yeah, so I believe on the liner notes in the CD it says, and one of the players, I think folks will know who he is, especially if you're from Halifax, is Buddy Day. I think it's as a child, he's doing the percussion, like some foot tapping and some backup vocals on the track. Yeah. Buddy Day is the very famous African Nova Scotian boxer, ombudsman for the province, had done a lot of advocacy for his community for sure.
There's a road named after him in Halifax.
There's a road named after him. Yeah, yeah. There's soon to be a museum in my neighborhood dedicated to him. Yeah. So there's these tunes that folks must have brought here with them or picked up, many of the community members of that time probably would have been porters, picked up on their travels and through other African American communities around the continent. So it speaks to a beautiful kind of remembrance within that community of this connection to a wider culture of music.